A woman takes a trip down memory lane, looking back at a time when she went on holiday with her father when she was a young girl. Should you watch this? I'm John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com, and this is my review of Aftersun. I'm a blind film critic, so this film has audio description if you're willing to rent it from iTunes, like I was, trying to get this one in just before the Oscar nominations. Might as well, since I predicted Paul Mescal for Best Actor and I predicted this in Best Original Screenplay. So I figured I should probably see the film I just predicted. Um, yeah, I predicted something I hadn't seen. I'm, I stand by my predictions. I'm not changing them. This is Charlotte Wells' directorial debut. It's gotten a fair amount of BAFTA nominations. It's a British film, but it's interesting because it also has a Sundance Institute grant. But it's one of those things that was made, with the I don't know, the hope and blessing of the BBC. I don't know how it presents it at the end with funding from the BBC. So it got like funding and grants from Sundance and BBC, and a lot of people have a lot of faith in Charlotte Wells. I don't know what she did to garner everybody's faith in her directorial debut, but everybody was very supportive of this effort, and I think it paid off. And I think A24 picked up this film. I think the question that A24 is going to be asking themselves um, is just, I think if they look back on this year, they're going to look back on it and go, we had a lot of really great movies, and we couldn't campaign all of them. How do we fix that? Like, how do we fix having so many films in the Oscar conversation, but kind of failing on some of them? A film like The Inspection, for example, is widely acclaimed, but is likely to walk away with no nominations. And Aftersun might be lucky enough to get one or two, if it gets any at all. Um, and they're these really small films that were released late in the year, and A24 is having a hard time getting people to talk about them when people want to talk about these larger films. Um, and they already have titles that they're campaigning. So I think perhaps they'll look back on this and they'll be like, man, Aftersun was a great film and we fucked that up. It just depends. It depends on how many nominations it gets in a few days. So, but I don't know. To talk about the film, I would say um, it's short, which is great. It's under 2 hours. So many films nowadays feel the need to be longer and longer and longer and longer. And Charlotte Wells is like, nope, my film's going to be about an hour and 40 minutes, um, which was nice. It was a nice change of pace. And when you have a film that's basically two people on holiday for the whole duration, I don't know that you want a 3 hour movie of that. I don't know how long this film could have possibly been. I don't know what they could have done for 3 hours. So I think this was tight and well told. And part of it is the fact that sometimes we don't remember the entirety of an event when we look back on our childhood. Like, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but you can look at me and you can guess. Um, so I think been told I've got some grays going on. So, um, but I look at Aftersun and I look at this as being a woman looking back on her childhood and looking back on this time that she spent with her father, who's divorced from her mother, and she obviously lives with her mother, and she just is doing this vacation with her father, played by Paul Mescal, and the younger girl version is played by the lovely Frankie Corrio, who I hope has a long career ahead of her. And I looked at that and it made me think a lot about my own memories with my own dad, and how when I think about the little memories and reflecting upon it as my dad is no longer around, um, and going through that. I lost my dad when I could still see, and I could still look at photos, and I could still sort of reflect upon those memories, and I wasn't just entirely confined to those that were in my memory only. You know, I could look at a photo and be like, oh, do I remember that day? What was that day? You know, and I think that's kind of what this is it's these things that we remember. Um, it's what we choose to remember out of an event. Sometimes we don't remember always how we got somewhere, but we remember that we were there. Sometimes we don't always remember why the conversation happened, but we remember that a conversation happened. We don't remember necessarily how we got something, but we know we got it. You know, um, and these little pieces of our childhood we string together, and we can form these memories. And when you go on a vacation like this, I have a feeling that for Aftersun, what Charlotte Wells has done here is she's made this sort of like a really important holiday, um, sort of like the highlight. So it's one of those memories that you are not likely to forget as much of. Also, Frankie Corrio is a little bit older, so that helps. Sometimes we tend to forget things the younger and younger we get. Like, I honestly don't remember anything before kindergarten. I don't remember ever doing anything before I was in school. So, I have no idea. First, couple of years of my life, gone. I don't remember being a toddler. So, but yeah, so she sort of remembers, and I think about the vacations that I've been on about the same time that Frankie Corrio was in them, and sort of the selective points that I remember, but I don't remember the conversations. But luckily, in this story, she has a camcorder, so she can see and look at the videos and watch. She can actually sort of see the little scenes, the little captured memories, and as an adult. And we don't always see them through like camcorder footage. This is not some like low grade Blair Witch film, by the way. This is sometimes it's used in it as to remind us that there is a camcorder, and that this is being recorded to make it easier for us to remember this amount of dialogue and this amount that's happening. But it's a really interesting exploration of how we look back on things and how we reminisce, and what is important, and sometimes how in the moment we don't know how important a moment is until it's past, until it's long gone, and until we're adults and we look back on things as kids and we go, wow, it's crazy. That's crazy what we remember, and it's crazy what we don't. It's crazy how we remember things, and how we remember people, and how we remember places, and how we remember events, and how we remember where we go, and what we see and what we do. And obviously in this relationship, Paul Mescal is I think he wants to be a good father, but he doesn't necessarily make all of the best choices in the world. And it's that kind of dynamic that he and Frankie Corrio have that make you believe, even though you know so little about her, the rest of her life, that she was probably a girl who had to grow up a little too quickly, especially seeing her dad kind of, I don't want to say he's not a train wreck. He's a total train wreck, but in this light, I'll just say in this light. So there are times where you just go, man, he could have done that better, but yeah, so it's a very interesting film, and I wonder how personal it is for Charlotte Wells. I don't know if this is, you know, reminiscent of her own childhood, and if she's trying to say something through that. Like she's walking sort of her own trip, you know, running parallel to this down memory lane, but it's very good film. The audio description here was very nice. It was very the tone was very appropriate for the whole film. I don't know how else to say that. It seemed to really capture and describe everything that was going on, and in very interesting ways. I liked the way a lot of the adjectives were used selectively to either enhance or to point out a situation. I can't come up with a quite. I know it's very vague, but like there's a certain way that you can describe something without any sort of extra flair that lets you know whether or not something is sketchy or not sketchy. You know, if you want to make something seem sketchy, there's a certain way you can describe it. If you want to make somebody feel annoyed, there are more ways that you can describe it than saying character looks annoyed. You know, I mean, there's ways that you can pick up on body language and just ways that you describe the whole situation and the reactions and everything that I think are very interesting. And I think this is a very well nuanced and written audio description script that was done really well, shot really well, read really well, and kind of a breath of fresh air because it's. I also really like the fact. I have to say, when we talk about intention in casting for audio description, I love the fact that this is a woman looking back on a woman's experience, like a little girl's experience. I love the fact that it's a female narrator. I think sometimes if we can make these little tiny things and we go, what is the most appropriate choice? In my Tilt review, I talked about that probably should have been a black narrator. In Aftersun, this is really from a female perspective. It's from a little girl's perspective. It's from an older woman looking back on her time as being a little girl. So to have a male narrator would have just been so odd. You know, just to have a man's voice, because the film is not from Paul Mescal's perspective at all. He's seen through her eyes, so it's everything that she remembers about him. Anyway, it's actually all of everything. I think everything was done right here. This is excellent audio description. And it's a really solid movie. I don't know if it's in my top 10, and I don't know if it's. I was taking my own relationships into account and thinking about and how it made me feel. And I think Aftersun, for certain people who've had certain relationships with their fathers, take away a lot more from this. I think there's some people, and it's totally valid, that this is the best film of the year, hands down, and that is fine. This is a film that will speak to a lot of people, and I fully support that. I think this is a great film, and it's just, I've given more than 10 A's this year. So when I'm talking about films that are at the top of the list that really truly affected me, I think the film is great. I think what Charlotte Wells did here is amazing. I think Paul Mescal it's effortless what he does. I heard somebody talk about the reason why they didn't think it would be nominated was because it seemed improvisational, and that's when you have an actor who makes something look easy, you know, is when it feels like you are watching someone's life, like somebody for real, you know, but it's not. When it seems like it's reality TV or that you're sneaking in on somebody and watching something you're not supposed to be seeing, sometimes that's a combination of a lot of things that had to happen to make that feel that way. That's a lot that had to do in terms of the way that the scene is shot, in terms of the scene was written, in terms of the scene being acted, in terms of the scene being directed. It's all of it that comes together to create that feeling, that sort of that these two people are feel so real, that they're just talking back and forth. Like there is no script, that they feel like actual father-daughter is that they feel like there actually is this relationship. I think is amazing, especially considering this is a breakthrough performance for Frankie and Corrio. So you're giving a lot of credit to a lot of people and saying that, oh, well, the screenplay obviously isn't worth it. It's worth a lot. I think the screenplay, to be able to write that kind of dialogue back and forth, is worth a lot. And to give that people that feeling of nostalgia, and to make people think about their own childhoods, their own relationship with their parents, depending on which parent you even think about. I mean, I'm a guy, not a little girl, and I still thought about the time that I spent with my father. And I don't have the same relationship that Frankie Corrio's character does with her father in this film. So, but I still took that walk down memory lane, and I think for certain people, that walk down memory lane will cause Aftersun to become a really impactful moment for them in their movie watching history. It just depends. It depends on where you're at. This film is going to hit harder for some people than it will for others. For example, I don't know how this would hit for somebody who maybe never knew their father. I don't know. So, or was adopted. We're all different. We all walk different paths. But I definitely think what Charlotte Wells captured here is really interesting, and I hope to see more from her in the future. I hope to see more from Paul Mescal, and I hope to see more from Frankie Corrio. I'm going to give Aftersun an A. Yeah, so this has my full endorsement. Again, I've given more than 10 films an A, so I sit here and I still go, but knowing what I currently have in my top 10, which I haven't released yet, is this going to take a film out? And I can already tell you no. It's going to fall short even within my group of A's. It'll be an honorable mention. Yeah, that's what happens when you see almost 300 films released in a calendar year. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. I want to keep talking about films with audio description. I want to create a world where we have audio description on everything. We don't have to worry about it. I want to have allies like the Sundance jury that walked out on a screening because that screening failed to provide captioning for juror Marley Matlin. So I want stuff like that. That's what I want. And I have to start somewhere. I have to start the conversation somewhere. So anyway, thanks for being here. And I have a website, MacTheMovieGuy.com. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at MacTheMovieGuy. You can go to the Audio Description Project, adp.acb.org. It'll let you know what has audio description and where you can watch it. And you can go to the ADNA.org, which is a great resource for looking up a narrator and seeing sort of their entire filmography. It's like IMDb for narrators and all other people who work in the audio description community. That's it for me today. I will review something else for you guys and see you on the other side.